This video will demonstrate how you can create custom plank types such as this I-beam in ArchiFrame. These custom plank types appear both in the Planks menu and also in the Custom Elements menu. In addition, I will show you how to change plank settings, such as whether the plank displays an X in the plan view. When creating custom plank types, the first thing you need to do is to understand how to use ArchiFrame's data folders and the BlocksChanges file. As discussed in the data folder video tutorial, ArchiFrame can read material types from two locations. First, we have the main data folder, which is updated along with ArchiFrame. In a separate location, you should also have a user-specific settings folder, which is not affected by software updates and where all your own material and element definitions should be saved. This user-specific settings folder should contain a file called ArchiFrame BlocksChanges. If you open this file using Notepad++, you will find the material list, which contains the definitions for the plank types you see in the ArchiFrame user interface. By default, only this material list, and not the main data folder's material list, is visible in the ArchiFrame UI. This is because the merge parameter at the top of the material list is set to replace by default. So when you need to create, edit, or delete plank types, do it by editing the material list in the BlocksChanges file. If you don't have either the material list or the entire BlocksChanges file in your folder, then you can copy and paste the BlocksChanges file from ArchiFrame's sample folder. This file contains ArchiFrame's default materials. If instead you would like to copy some materials from your local data folder, that is also possible. For example, Norwegian users might like to continue using the materials in the Norwegian data folder because these materials have Norwegian names. As I mentioned, using the default material list in your BlocksChanges file means that you will no longer see the contents of your own country's data folder in ArchiFrame. To continue using your local materials while also being able to customize the material list, the easiest thing to do is to add your local material list in your BlocksChanges file. To do so, search for the word materials in the Norwegian blocks file. Then copy everything from below the round material to the end of the material list. And then the right place to paste these materials is again under the round material in your BlocksChanges file. So now you know how you can add materials to the material list from other data folders. I'll just stick to the default material list for now. Of course, it is also possible to delete materials from the list. I'll now delete most of the materials in my list. I could also edit the materials by changing their parameters. For example, I could change the name and dimensions of this material from 22 by 50 to 22 by 100. The maxlen parameter refers to the maximum length that a plank can be without receiving a maxlen mark in the floor plan. The units are meters, with dots as decimal separators. Please see section 17.2 of the ArchiFrame instructions manual for a list of all the plank parameters that you can change in the BlocksChanges file. Now I will return to ArchiFrame to demonstrate the effect of editing the material list of the BlocksChanges file. To see your updated material list in ArchiFrame, refresh the data folder by opening and closing the ArchiFrame settings dialog. Now, if you open the Plank Tools dialog, you can see the new 22 by 100 mm plank and the other materials that were left in the material list. As you can see, the 22 by 100 mm plank can now be added in the floor plan. But what if we wanted to add a material with a custom shape? For example, you may need an I-beam with different dimensions compared to the one in the sample folder. Creating a plank type with a custom shape requires 4 steps. First, draw the shape using a fill. I will create an I-beam that is 248 mm tall and 89 mm wide from the top and bottom. The second step is to define the position of the plank's bottom middle anchor. This position is defined with the ArchiCAD user origin. Set the user origin to the middle of the bottom edge of the plank. Once this anchor is defined correctly, all the other anchors will work as well. Now that the shape and position of the plank are set, the third step is to transform the plank's definition into XML format. With the fill selected, open the ArchiFrame selection tool and select the option Dump Profile from Fill. In the final step, copy this profile definition and paste it in the BlocksChanges XML file. Here, I will duplicate one of the existing materials and change the name to I248 with thickness 89 mm and height 248 mm. Next, I will move the profile definition to the correct location. Note that the plank's definition must always end with the material line, so any parameters must be added on top of that line. To make the file easier to read, I will also add indents using the tab key. Lastly, I will save the BlocksChanges file. To see the new plank type in ArchiFrame, I will once again refresh the ArchiFrame data folders by opening and closing the settings dialog. Now I will add the new plank so that it is perpendicular to the drawing plane, like a column. As you can see, the plank has the same shape as our fill. However, it also has this X passing through the edges of the profile, which makes the drawing look a bit messy. Therefore, I will finish this video by removing the X in the BlocksChanges file by changing the parameter IColLines. Our plank's material definition does not contain this parameter. If the parameter is not defined for your material, then the plank will show the X by default. To control the representation settings of this individual plank, I will copy the IColLines parameter along with two other parameters from the I300 plank definition. Then I will paste them under the first line and set the values of IColLines to 0, which means that no X will be shown. Now I will return to ArchiFrame and refresh the data folders one more time. Any new I248 planks will no longer display the X. To update the existing plank, I will first change its type to some other plank and then change back to the original I-beam. Now the X disappeared from this plank as well. And finally, here is a 3D view of the plank.